The desert is where the ocean leaves the land, and it is here that the parched heat of the midday sun, where the sound of the peacock is basically welcome because it indicates the possibility of rain. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ishan Khosla, and my talk, The Peacock in the Desert, looks at the materiality of the Rabari pastoral embroidery as type design. It addresses the ATypI theme of home screen, designed for belonging, and it explores how typographic systems shape access, identity, and participation in the digital age. So the Rabaris are a group of pastoralists that roam the deserts of Kutch and Rajasthan in India and Sindh in Pakistan. So Rabari sheep and camel herders once led a nomadic life in search of pasture, but now they're not so nomadic, they're settling down. Traditionally, men herd the livestock while women would do household chores such as fetching water, which of course is an essential item in a desert community. And they would sometimes have to walk long distances to get water if the wells dried up in summer. And so this scene is so like iconic when you travel to these areas that they've become kind of embedded in their embroideries. And you can see in the middle is another typeface we did with tattoos. So they actually have become part of the iconography. And so we tried to capture some of these iconographies using discretionary ligatures in the typeface itself. So milking the camel and churning milk into butter are also other tasks that women do, as you can see in these embroideries. So there are many icons that we brought into the typeface. I won't be going through all of them. So the Rabari women spend long hours on their bharat or embroidery, which is practiced as an expression of their cultural identity while on the move. Um, like tattoos, embroideries mark the community. They give them identity, and they are also give them rites of passage, uh, telling a person whether a woman is married, not married, how old she is, just by looking at her embroideries. So, just as cattle were an important measure of wealth, so too was their embroidery, which was passed down from mother to daughter and used to adorn the bridal trousseau. And so the Rabaris, like other communities in Kutch, have rich embroideries, and but they all have a different system of iconography, kind of like a brand identity, you can think of it, but for a community, right? So basically, it creates pride and it creates ownership to a community, and it also allows you to distinguish between one community and another. In fact, embroideries was so important that they adorn everything from their camels to their homes to themselves. Everything that they own or possess has embroidery all around it. It's wrapped up. And the Rabaris actually believe that their dense embroidery is, which is based on plant and animal motifs, represent the lushness and abundance of an oasis. In which case, minimalism reflects the kind of sparseness of the desert. It's lifeless, it's empty, it's poor. In fact, they consider minimalism as a sign of mourning or poverty. And the Rabaris hence contrast the barren minimalism with the desert, of the desert with their dense, colorful clothing, right? And basically, no space is left. The entire cloth is covered with embroidery. There's no empty space. So, to capture this dense and colorful detail of embroidery, we have constructed also a multicolor typeface using four multiple masters, and each layer is named according to the different parts of the embroidery. So you have something called the dant, which you just see, which is like teeth, but they reference the cactus. You have the abla, which is the mirrors, the circles. Then you have the fill and the outline. Additionally, we've created a typeface which comes in three different densities of embroidery. And one is called halko, which means light. So instead of using like Roman or regular semi bold and bold, we wanted to use local terms. So halko really means light or lightweight. Mulayam means soft to touch, so we want to bring in texture into the typeface. And gera means depth, so depth of color. Like if you dye cloth, that has a deep, saturation. So alternates were also used to indicate the various borders that this kind of borderless nomadic community uses in their textiles. I won't go through all of them. Um, so, of course, I hope you all know, but this is all handmade. So there are many people involved in this. So I'm going to briefly talk about the faces behind the faces, so to speak. So, each type-crafted font starts out by me being made handmade by the community themselves. This ensures community involvement and ownership. It also helps keep the project alive and relevant to changing times. When a craft is already drawn like kolam or tattoos, the process of constructing type is different than if it uses embroidery, applique, or some other type of material, which takes a long time to make. So what we have to do is we have to mimic the craft, right? So embroidery, like if you just saw that was Jenny Ben holding an R, that would take 3 days to make. And when we are doing design, as you know, we want to do lots of explorations in the beginning and then hone into the final outcomes, right? Because we're going from something like a embroidery which does not look like letters to letters. It's a totally and it changes every time. If you go with floor art, it's a different system. If you go with tie dye, it's another lexicon and vocabulary that it has, and the process of making is different. So we have to mimic the craft using cheap and easy to use materials like paper and pigments. And so here we made a Arabic script typeface called Bandhani Arabi, which is currently showing at the Venice Biennale. And for that, we worked with the Khatri women in Kutch, where they basically use different dots, which I showed in the previous slide, to kind of mimic this tie dye aspect. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of patriarchy, and a lot of the women are not allowed to be designers. They're usually given the design by the men or by urban designers like myself, but I don't do that. So, so the process is very challenging for us because we go there and we say, no, we want you to start working. We don't want to tell you what an A looks like or what an H looks like. But how do you that? But that makes it much more challenging, time consuming, and there's a risk of failure. A lot of these people are also quote unquote illiterate, but I don't like that term because they're literate in their craft and I'm illiterate in their craft, right? So uh, they don't know certain things like letters, maybe like Latin script. I don't know their craft, right? So it's kind of an exchange that we do during these workshops. And in the case of Rabari, the women actually struggled to come up, even with paper and materials, to come up with letter forms. And so what we had to do, so improvisation is part of the game when you're in a village. Material shortages and surprises happen, and you have to just improvise as you go along. And so what we did was we actually started looking at their walls and their existing embroideries to take inspiration for letter forms. So that's actually a bicycle. So they also embroider and create designs of the bicycle. That's a mud wall with mirrors. So their walls and their furniture kind of mimic their embroidery. It's all like one thing, but just a different material. And so we use that lexicon of this kind of curve form, the dant, as I called mentioned, the teeth, and we kind of move forward. And many women from the community were involved. Some really enjoyed it. Some found it a bit frustrating or challenging, let's say. But I think overall it was a very positive experience. And what was great is that at the end of the workshop, some of them could even write their name in the Latin script. They figured out some of the letters. Um, in terms of origins of the Typecraft Initiative, which I'll talk about in a second, um, people used to ask me like, what made me a New York-based art director return to India in 2008 and end up working with rural craftswomen. Like it's totally going from the Big Apple to like this crazy village environment, like people who met me many years later. And I tell them that actually, when I returned to India in 2008, I felt that graphic design was very disconnected from the real India, the chaotic India, the India of the streets, the villages. It was too cold for me. It did not feel connected to the culture. And I felt that typecraft is one way for me to have a dialogue with the real India, with people in the villages, in the in the small towns, people who are talented in crafts, and can we have this exchange using type? Being a graphic designer and now a kind of a semi-type designer, I thought that that was an interesting way to start a dialogue. And basically, we go from the original, like this is a tattoo called Bega tattoo. So the process is going from that, then kind of figuring out what are the iconographies and the forms, then getting letters out of this. What you see there in number two is the end result. There are many steps in between, but I will not go into this project and into the process. And then finally, we get into vectorization and glyphs. And as you can see, the number of nodes are really high. And that makes it, again, complex as a typeface. And then we want to also add discretionary ligatures and all sorts of fun features, which makes this a very challenging project. The other thing is that we don't make sans serif typefaces. We make typefaces that are sans racism. So we stand for, because we work with so many people from all over the country and even other countries, that diversity is like a core ethos of what we do, whether it's LGBT, women's rights, different races. Uh, this has become, over time, it's become that. It wasn't that when I started it, but because we're working with different communities, how can you not want to support those communities, right? And so diversity in terms of not only ethnicity, but in terms of materiality, in terms of geography. And so now Typecraft, like we're actually in our 15th year, and we worked with 15 different communities so far. And I guess the the last bit I'll get into is some of the typefaces that we have designed up till now. I won't be able to go into depth, but one of the first typefaces we designed was with the Gond tribe, and this is a tattoo-based typeface. This was done in 2012, and it became a typeface around 2013 or 14. Um, and This is a community. I mean, I won't be able to get into it, but similar to embroidery, the tattoo icons represent. They're not just random. They represent meaning. They represent ownership and identity, and they represent rites of passage for a woman growing up from like a child to motherhood. Similarly, we recently did the Bega tattoo typeface as well. It's also in the same region in central India. We've also done something called Soof, which is another embroidery, as a multicolored typeface. And again, it's an embroidery that is super colorful. It comes from the desert. So we have like two versions of the Soof as single color, and then two versions as a multicolor. So that's Barmer from another part of the desert. And this is also, so that was applique, that was patchwork, and this is applique. And then we also done a Devanagari typeface from eastern part of India called Bihar. It's called Madhubani, and highly detailed. This was done in collaboration with Typeland, Vaibhav Singh, who's based in the UK. And currently we're working on Ajrak, which is a block printed typeface. Well, based on block printing. And this is Bandhani Arabi, which is the Arabic typeface done with tie dye, if you're aware of the process. So that's, I believe, a Vav. And this is a Ramayan typeface. So Ramayan is, of course, one of the books, Hindu books that we have, and it's done in the it's a mythology. It's a entire story. I mean, it's been told in many different ways. There are Japanese anime made out of it, and movie films, etc. And so now we are working with folk artists to construct the different, the characters, quote unquote. Uh, and we're using ligatures again, discretionary ligatures. So if you type any of the main people in the book, basically like Ram or Sita, you get all the letters becoming about that person's life in in the story. This is a floor art from Tamil Nadu in South India called Kolam, and so we're working with that as well right now. Currently, it uses rice paste, and it's an ephemeral art form, which basically traditionally was done by women outside their home, and it was meant as a way of offering, but also as a way for auspicious, like basically bringing good vibes into the house. And it's highly geometric, and it's based on a grid. But because it disappears every day and they have to repeat the process, we thought we could experiment and do a typeface which also has different weights, which kind of vanishes as you go down. I don't know. It's just a thought. And lastly, we have the Pardhan Gond, which is another folk art from central India. These are people who live in the forest, and they have lots of stories about the forest, their gods, and the people that they worship are actually animals and trees. And in the world of climate change, it's nice to kind of go back to nature and look at people who really value and understand our environment. And perhaps this could be taken further in different ways. But that's all I have. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ishan. So anyone has questions? We can take a few questions.
Hi, Ishan. Fantastic presentation. Um, I was just curious about what kind of base typefaces you give them to like introduce them to acting.
We don't give them base typefaces. So either we try to just use like materials, like I'll just try to go back, or we draw by hand. Like here in the Indic one, it's completely done by the artist. We just had to control the thickness of the stems and the proportions, but the rest was all done by them because they have such a strong understanding of their own script. In some cases, I'm just trying to see if I can find that slide. Well, I can't find it. Oh, here, the paper one. So here again, there's no base typeface. This is cut paper, which mimics patchwork, which is basically you fold cloth and cut it. But we did it with paper just because it takes less time and it's cheaper. So again, there's no base typeface. They just had to figure out the circles, the rounds, and the straights and the diagonals, and then combine them. So that's how we work. Yeah. Wait. Thank you. Good question, though.
Are there any more questions?
Everything's so fascinating. When you are working with the highly detailed lifts in glyphs or whatever uh, software, how do you manage that?
Yeah, we pray. No, but seriously, I mean, we have to sometimes simplify some of the drawings or the work that the people have done because some of them is super intricate. So we have to reduce the number of nodes or simplify, and that's another challenge I didn't talk about in the. I usually talk about it, but I didn't have time. So, but yeah, that's one of the decisions we have to make: is do we keep the original artwork, like the sanctity of that, or do we change it? And we sometimes have to change it. Yeah.
Building on Tyler's curious, do you try to
Like here, there's a lot of different proportions and ends.
Yeah.
Do you try to have those constraints going in with the craft, or do you take samples of everything and then figure it out when you're in the digital space?
Yeah, great question. Again, I usually include this, but it's good you asked that question. So what we do is, because this is all community-based craft, we try to work with as many people, and some are more skilled, some are less skilled, and that's fine. And we try to initially give no constraints. We want them to do whatever they want. Like that's why we don't give them a base typeface, or we try not to draw anything. And a lot of these crafts don't use drawing. A lot of them just know it in their head, like what the shapes are and forms are. So that's another thing I bring into design. Like yesterday's workshop, we bring back those ideas that we don't like. How can you construct things without drawing or without the computer? And but to answer your question, initially they make whatever they want, and then over time, like we give them a few days. It depends on the length of the workshop. We then do bring in some constraints, like maybe we like the proportion of the L, so then we say, okay, that's the stem, and then based on that, what should be the P and the R, et cetera, et cetera. So we do at some point have to get to that stage, but not initially.
I was just curious, like, how do you figure out where you want to go or which community you want to visit, or how do you learn about these specific folk crafts and decide which one to focus on?
Well, sometimes we get invited. Like I was invited to Qatar to work with refugees from Gaza 2 years back, to work on a Tatriz embroidery based typeface in Arabic. But sometimes it's about need and interest. So usually I do a recce and meet communities and talk to them about the project and see if they're interested. Um, so there are multiple factors. One is that can that craft become a typeface, because not everything can become a typeface, right? So it needs to have enough variation. And the other is the interest of the community and also their need. So are they like poor? Do they need income? Do they need exposure? Those sort of things.
So how do you keep your initiative financially sustainable? Do you get financial?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not easy. So initially it was self-funded, and in between it was a foundation. So we used to get grants, but now it's gone back to the self-funded, and we use the sales of the typefaces to, keep it going, basically, which is not a lot, but we try.
Fantastic talk.
Thank you.
How is the typeface used once it's digitized?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we don't like the ones I've seen, because not everyone shares. It's obviously these are all display typefaces, right? So mostly posters. We've seen them in books as drop caps or covers. So large sizes. Interestingly, I've seen it in the Chicago Botanical Garden used it for a show on Indian like plants or something, and then even in Minnesota, the Goldstein Museum used it. The Goldstein Museum of I think textiles, and they basically used the Suf embroidery because they were doing an exhibition from that region. So it kind of that was interesting to see. Yeah, thanks.
Great.
Where are the typefaces is available?
On our website, like typecraftinitiative.org, I've shared a QR code as well at the back at the last bit. Also Instagram.
Thank you, Ishan.
Thank you. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
Yeah. And